everybody, it's Jess with Solbee Home. I have a super fun snow globe project for you guys, for my IOD lovers here. I just need to start out by pouring some resin into some of the smaller shapes. And I had an idea just to kind of stick some wooden beads in the back of them once they were starting to set up, because I'm going to use these like a stamp. So this is the amazing casting resin in white. If you use this, don't forget to wear proper PPE. Now, I chose these wooden beads because they were big enough for my fingers, but then also light enough to hopefully not go all the way through. And I've never done this before. I didn't know if it would work, but I think it works pretty well. I only had one or two of them pop off later. So here they are all set up. And I did kind of a heavy pour, so I'm going to need to cut and trim some of them with a little X-Acto knife. So if you have to do that whenever you're pouring this quick resin, it's always easier to do it kind of right away after the 10 minutes of them setting up. If you wait, it gets a lot harder to do. So I know a lot of people are doing the snow globes with the clear resin, and they look amazing. I just don't really like to use that resin whenever I can. I mean, it takes a while to set up. I mean, about 24 hours, and it is very smelly. I don't have a good spot to do that. I'm not going to be able to leave it in my garage due to variable temps. And I definitely don't want to do it in my house again. So I'm trying to stay away from that. That's why I had this idea. I don't mind doing the quick resin. That's about 10 minutes. I kick the dog out to the back patio. He does not hate that at all. And then I keep my windows open, even for just this resin. But I want to do the main body as clay. So that is a lot less toxic and easier to deal with. And then I won't have to pour these again. The idea is that I can reuse these over and over again with a clay snow globe body. So now I'm just trimming some of these, like I said, with a little X-Acto knife. I have a tiny little mat that comes in handy for that. And here's the wooden beads I used. You don't even really have to do that. I had a couple that didn't have the bead or it fell off. I don't really remember. I know at least one fell off. And I was still able to do the impression with that little star without a problem. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the clay body of the snow globe. And I'm going to use each one of these. These are just basically a little prototype. I wanted to see how my idea would work. So I always start by dusting my mold with cornstarch. And I'm going to be using my favorite air dry clay, DOS in white. So I've just worked it a good bit to try to get it nice and smooth, and then I'm going to go ahead and push it into my mold. I always take my time with this and try to push it into all of the little detailed edges really nicely. And then I'll be using a dough scraper on the back. And I actually didn't even order this mold right away when it first came out. I just didn't see as much of the appeal as everybody else did. But once I saw the little deer, I don't know why. I just love the little, it's like a little fawn or a doe. And I decided, you don't have to just use the clear resin. I can figure something else out with it. And so here we are. It's probably going to end up being one of my favorite Christmas molds. And I like to use either a palette knife or this sourdough kit dough scraper that I got. I don't use it for bread anymore, don't worry. But it works great. It actually works a lot better if you keep it clean. I should practice what I preach. But it does good at helping you remove excess clay. That way you're not wasting your clay and you're getting a cleaner demold. I'm going to try out my idea. This is the first one. So I'm going to make an impression. I'm using this like a stamp. You notice that I did this. There's one that popped off. But I did this before applying it to my gesso board just to make sure that it was going to look all right. And it's kind of hard to see on my screen, but I'm very happy with that. So I'm going to add some snowflakes. And this is just really a beautiful mold. I love the edges around the snow globe. If you have some bad cracks, you can always use a little bit of water on your fingertip or something to smooth it. If it's really bad, you might want to go ahead and try to recast it. And I'm going to just put some Mod Podge on a 5x5 gesso board. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach my first snow globe. When I apply the clay, I lay it flat and go ahead and lightly tap down on all surfaces to go ahead and try to attach it to my board firmly. Anywhere that's not been tapped down is not going to go down as it dries. So I try to keep that in mind. And I'm also putting a little water in a crack there and trying to smooth it. I'm gonna go ahead and cast the other snow globe. Looking back at this, I probably should have redone this one. It's just a little wonky around the edges, but I was so excited to try out my little impressions. I didn't go back and fix that. It's fine. It still works out good in the end. But I'm using the deer and some trees, some little stars and snowflakes on this one, and I'm going to make my own little dots of snow too. The impressions are really pretty forgiving. I'm sure if I was too heavy-handed with it, I could possibly go through, and then that wouldn't be good. But otherwise, it's really pretty easy to get your impression into this clay. I mean, you've seen me do it with stamps a lot, but I've just never done it really with another piece of resin. At least not that I remember. I know I do a lot of stuff on here. This idea really does open up a lot of other possibilities. I'll have to play around with some other molds using resin castings as basically stamp impressions. Now I added a bow and some beautiful little dots from Victoriana, and my record button wasn't on and I thought it was, but I'll show you how I do the other edge. And this is a very delicate little casting. Those can be difficult to demold without them coming apart, and that did happen here, but it's not a big deal. And I'm just applying it straight onto my snow globe with Mod Podge. In the way that this pair happened, I was looking for a pretty bow to put on top of the mold, the snow globe mold, and then I found that bow on Victoriana and added a little bit more to the edges as well, just to give it some more character. These two molds do pair very well together. And I decided to add a couple stars just to go ahead and give it some more texture. I'm going to go ahead and add one more snowflake just right here under my bow. I'm also going to take this dotting tool and just add basically little polka dots all over my snow globe. And these are looking awesome so far. I'm going to let my clay fully dry before moving on to this next step. Now that they're dry, I like to dust off some of the excess cornstarch. Now I want to go ahead and seal my work with what I have so far. I'm using Duraclear gloss varnish all over the edges and my clay. And just remember, this is dried. I usually kind of eyeball it. Typically 24 hours is a safe bet unless it's a very thick piece of clay. Then it might take a little bit longer to be able to go ahead and move on to this next step. So now I have both of my boards that I'm covering in brown glaze. I had already let the clear coat fully dry too. This is super easy to control because of the sealer underneath. I like to use some sort of pointed or angled brush when I do this to make sure I get the glaze into all these beautiful details that have been created. I'm also able to add more where it's needed while continuing to wipe back the excess with a baby wipe. There's a part of me that always loves just this look of glazed clay. You could do this, you could go ahead and do a coat of white before sealing and then seal it, add glaze. It gives you a nice French country look. I'm going to do more on these because I need them to kind of pop. Plus, I really enjoy playing around with color. I like to let the glaze fully dry before moving on to adding anything else. Now that that has dried for over 12 hours at least, I'm going to go ahead and add some color. This is French Eggshell by Fusion. I'm doing very light coverage. I want to be able to see some of that glaze underneath. I want it to look aged. If it's too heavy in certain spots, I'm taking just a little shop rag piece and blotting over that. And I decided to do the same color for both of my boards. Now, again, it's hard to know when to stop. I like this look too with just the blue border around the snow globes. I think it's very pretty and, again, very French country, shabby chic. Some of my favorite styles. So you don't have to continue on. Do what you like. I don't typically do the paint over the glaze for a background, but I like how this turned out. The molds are really popping even better now with some color behind them. Especially this cute little bow. I love how it looks on top of this snow globe. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing to this other board. And here they are, pretty in blue. I want to make a little bit of pink. I'm using some acrylics and a lot of water. Not necessarily a lot of water in the paint, but on my brush. I like to think of it as basically trying to make a liquid acrylic. And that's just because I want it to be light and sheer enough to still see my glaze underneath. I can always go back, and I actually do this a lot with a little disposable shop rag. And if that's not enough, you can always take a baby wipe over it. And for my second board, I want to go ahead and just put some of this pretty color onto the floral portions of the mold. I have this iridescent copper color that I think will look pretty with the pink and the blue. And again, I just have a wet brush and I dip it into my paint, kind of slide it around on my tray, and then I apply the paint to the surface of my clay. I'm going to go ahead and cover this body of the snow globe too. I'm going to skip the scrolls and add some pink on top of those in a minute. So I want to put something on my globes, but I don't really want to cover up any of my details. I'm going to try this iridescent white, and I think it's working really good. It's not covering up any of the stamped details, but it's still going to have that subtle hint of shimmer, especially when certain lights hit it. And I like how that's turning out. I'm going to go ahead and add it to my second snow globe. I'm going to grab my other one and go back to this. It's just looking a little too washed out, so I'm taking some burnt umber and putting it over the base again. And this just gives it a little more dimension, and I'm going to wipe some of it back so it's not too dark. Now that my bow has dried a little bit more, I want to add some of that iridescent white on top of the pink. I also made this pastel green color, and I'm going to add it to the edges of the snow globe. And I still just wasn't loving this. I went back with more pink and am making that base pop even more. Then I am taking it another step further and adding some color into the impressions on this one only. This is very light-handed and light paint. That way I'm not covering up those details again. I wanted a little bit of blue, so I'm going to grab that Fusion, and it's a little heavier, so I have to really carefully go ahead and wipe it back right away. So at this point, why not take it a step further? I'm going to add some stamping to the edges. I'm going to be using Countryside Memoirs for one of them. And I'm just picking out some florals. I've got 2 stamps that mirror each other. And my basically starting point is the 4 corners of the board, and I'm just going to build around my snow globe. I'm using stone gray ink. So now, of course, my mind is going a mile a minute about how awesome some of these stamps would look in the snow globe also. Not with these, but another project for another day for sure. And just a reminder, if you are inspired by one of my creations and you would like to send it to me to feature on my Facebook page, I would love to do that. Just make sure that you put a watermark on it, or I can do that for you if you'd like. But I would love to share your pieces that are inspired from any of my creations. You can email them to me or send them to me on Facebook or Instagram. My email is solbeehome@gmail.com. I'm just going around my border very organically. That's my favorite term because I don't like perfection when it comes to these projects. So just do it organically. If I sit here and get the stamps perfectly symmetrical, that takes the fun out of it. So for my second one, I want to use Flora and Vine. And this is a larger stamp. It goes a lot quicker. I'm just filling in all of that negative space with some form of stamping from this one particular stamp. I don't know why my camera decided to go in and out of focus right there, so I apologize for that. And this is the final step. I'm not even going to add any gold wax or anything this time. I'm so happy with how these turned out. They are so pretty, and I have my little impressions ready to go for next time. Here are some of the paints that I used. I'll try to link everything in the description. Feel free to ask me any questions if you have them in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Have an awesome week.